Hi everyone, it's Lynn from Devine Central. Yesterday I did a video called The Celtic Cross is Not Hard. And in it I showed you how I modified the Celtic Cross to make it work for me. And in doing so, I literally turned it from the crappiest, worst spread ever for me into my absolute go-to spread. So now that I've shown you how I did that and how I use it, I'd like to give you two examples today in this video of what you can do to have it make more sense to you. Now, one of the things I said yesterday was that there are no rules. You can make this into whatever you want it to be, whatever resonates and works for you. And since I've already given you what works for me, let me show you why that works for me. Today, you don't have to do a really heavy, deep down dive into this spread in order to understand it. A simple scan and count will usually suffice. Now, if you do 10 and 20 of those in a row, you will find that you start training your brain to look for the things that you're counting and analyzing. And then pretty soon, you don't need to count and scan because your brain just does it automatically as soon as you look at the table. Okay, so let me reiterate from the last video. This is my subject or the matter at hand. This is what crosses me. This is the obstacle. Now, people are not going to come to me and sit down and say, oh, my life is so wonderful. Tell me what's going to go wrong. They don't do that. They come to you because they've got a problem. They have some type of an issue, some type of a decision they need to make, some type of options that they have to settle on, something they don't feel right about. They come to you because it's an obstacle. So it's a perfect obstacle card for me. All right, so below for me is, I don't need an unconscious. I don't need to know what's unconsciously, going through their psyche. I need to know where this all came from. And so for me, it made more sense that this is the foundation. This is what precipitates this whole subject matter, okay? The card to the left for me, card number 4, is either something that is currently happening or just happened, and now the energy that's leaving. It's the energy that's now dissipating and going away because it's already happened. For me, card number 5 is literally what's on your mind. I mean, if it's considered the conscious card, right? Well, what are you consciously thinking? I mean, you're thinking about your hopes and your dreams and your goals and your what ifs and what could go wrong. And all those thoughts are going through your head. And so we don't need 2 hopes and fears, right? It's all rolled up in this one. What's on your mind? What are you thinking? Then we come around to card number 6. And this one for me, if this is what's dissipating, the energy that's leaving, this is the energy that's coming into being. And so for me, this is kind of the next step. We don't need 2 outcomes. I want to know just what is the next step? What's coming around the bend that we need to work with? I don't turn these cards over. This is my staff. This is my spirit-driven path for this client or this querent. And so normally I leave this out and I just read what's currently going on so I can get a handle on that first. Then I turn these cards over one at a time when I'm doing a reading. And I start with the number 7. How are you going to sabotage the situation? Right? This is what you should not be doing. Okay, this is a warning. Whatever it is that's on our mind and whatever it is that we want to do about our situation, it's typically something that we've learned environmentally. We watched our parents handle situations. We've had past experiences that once bitten, twice shy, right? And we've learned We've learned how what we do and how we react to certain situations works for us. So we use it every time. And so this card warns us that, hey, just because this is something we've done in the past does not necessarily mean it's right for this situation. So it's just a warning card. Card number 8, the environment over which you have no control. Okay. Number 9 for me then is advice, because I think every tarot reading should have advice. This is advice from Spirit. And that leaves us with the outcome card. But to me, this is the potential outcome if you follow your current path. So if you choose to do everything the way you've always done it and not pay attention to what the next step is and ignore your environment and not listen to any advice from Spirit, and this is pretty much where you're going to end up. And the nice thing about that is you have the opportunity to change it if you don't like it. Okay, so let's do a simple scan and count here. So we know we have 2 major cards here, right? And we have 8 minors. And it's interesting because major cards are usually about a lesson or about some major event that's going to affect our lives, where the minors are things that, day-to-day things that we have control over. And we don't always have control over the majors. In fact, most of the time we don't. So even though there's only 2 lowly little major cards here, they pretty much trump everything else that's going on. All right, so we also have 2 queens, I noticed here. Okay, and that's 2 court cards, and they're both queens, and that brings in an interesting flavor, right? These are all things that are gathering in your psyche to read this reading. We have 2 aces as well, and the aces are something new. We're at the start of something here, okay? We've got 2 sevens. We have 1 8, and that leaves us with 1 4. Now, interesting, the 4 is in the final position, right? So if we look at numbers, and I love numbers, if you look at numbers, 1's being the beginning of a project or the start of a journey, and 9's being completion, and 10's being that transition to the next thing. We have a 4. That tells us we're not even close to being halfway done with this thing, right? So we're in a situation that obviously is going to be prolonged in some way. Okay, so what is next? Let's look next at the elements. Okay, so we have, aside from our majors, we have 3 swords. We have the ace, the queen, and the 4. Okay, we also have 3 cups. We have the 7, the 8, and the queen. We have 1 lowly pentacle, right? And then we have 1 lowly wand. So, wow, we don't have a lot of energy here, do we? And it's not about monies and possessions. It's not a lot about that. It's pretty equal. If you get past this, whatever happened, it's pretty equal, like thought, communication, and dealing with that through the feelings. Okay. So now let's look at what is active and what is passive. To me, it's pretty equal. So let's start with active, okay? So what is active? The tower is absolutely active, right? It's blowing up. To me, all aces are active. They are on the move. They are doing something. The devil is active. He is actively making the whole situation very toxic, okay? So he's a troublemaker, and he's causing trouble in this particular situation. It looks like it's panning out that he's causing an issue. And the 8 of cups, this is somebody who is facing forward, walking away. They are walking away from a situation that's no longer working for them, and they're taking positive action for self-care. And so to me, I think that's very active. Then we have the passive cards. So to me, anyone that's sitting is passive. I have 2 queens that are sitting, and they're passive. I think kings are passive because they're sitting. Except for my Anna K deck, my King of Wands is very active. He's marching down the path. And so if I'm reading with that deck, then he happens to be active. This is all interpretive, personal. So it's strictly up to you. What else is active here? We have the 7 of Cups, which to me, the guy is frozen in space. He's procrastinating. He can't figure out what he wants right now. He's got too many options. He's overwhelmed. He's standing still. And to me, that is passive. We have the 7 of Pentacles. Same thing. Here's a guy leaning on his hoe, can't decide whether he wants to move forward, call it a day, throw in the towel, whatever. So that's passive. And of course, our 4 is laying down. So he would be passive. So let's look at one more thing. So that's 5 and 5. Okay. So now let's look at what's positive and what's negative. On the positive side, we have both wands. And to me, wands are always positive. It's a new start. It's something fun and fresh and exciting. So I always consider those to be very positive. I think that the Queen of Cups is very positive. She's nurturing, she's caring, she's compassionate. She's always trying to help us and give us, heartfelt advice. And so I always think that she's a very positive person. And then, of course, the 8 of Cups, to me, doing something positive for yourself, moving forward despite the situation, to me is a positive card. So that's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So what's negative? Okay. That leaves the other 6, right? So the devil to me is negative. The Tower, if you look at the current situation, it's negative. If you look at what that Tower coming down will provide you in the future, it could be very positive. But for right now, it's in the present tense, and so to me, it's negative. Then we have the 7 of Cups. Here's a guy that's standing around. He's so overwhelmed. And to me, if you're not making a move, if you're not doing something positive, if you're not moving forward, if you're just stuck, then to me, that's negative, being stuck. I also think that this guy who can't make up his mind, whether he wants to come or go or whatever, I think that is negative. And you know what? The 4, it's not negative that you stop and think about your situation. That's not negative. But the fact that he's laying down on the job and he's not being proactive at the time, to me, is kind of a negative thing. So we have 4 positive and 6 negative. So now, even if I've lost you at this point, what I've just said is in your brain, and you can't take it back and you can't give it away. It's already in your brain and you're not going to get rid of it, okay? So subconsciously, it's going to start working for you. So let's go around and take a look at what this spread has to offer, okay? I always go with the first thing that's in my head. I'm sitting across from a woman. She is being totally non-communicative. She's not telling me what's going on, but I don't like the scowl on her face. I'm reading her body language. We have the devil. Okay, I think recently somebody has cheated on her. It's a husband, a boyfriend, somebody has cheated, and the whole situation has blown up. And what blew it up? The truth. Okay, the truth has blocked her from knowing what's going on. And I see her down here in the foundation. I look at her face. I look at her stature. I look at the fact that she's not communicating. I don't see a lot of feeling. She's sitting there very stoic. And so I see her coming out in this card. And I'm thinking, you know what? She's not happy. And she hasn't been happy for quite some time. And in fact, I don't see the Queen of Swords as being a very emotional, giving person, and very smart, very analytical, very much can get things done, very good at thinking things through. But, being loving and caring and fun, not so much. And so I think she could be part of the problem instead of part of the solution. So maybe that's why he kind of ventured off on his own. But for whatever reason, she now knows. And she probably already knew, but now she knows for sure something happened that broke this open. That obstacle has now cleared. And what it brought to her blew everything up. Now, I'm going to go up here to what's on her mind. This is the Ace of Wands. This is about passion. This is about having a strong desire for a fresh start at something. And as you can well imagine, if you come down here to how can you sabotage yourself, or, what may be the action that you shouldn't take, her big desire for the fresh start starts by walking away from the whole situation. And you can see she's got her back to him. She is facing forward. I want nothing to do with it. And she's looking at walking away. And honestly, if you look at the foundation, where this whole thing started and what's on her mind and how she planned, and one of the things that's on her mind, by the way, is how she's going to deal with it. However, am I going to get through this, right? Well, she's already thinking scenarios. And the first thing on her mind is walking away. Well, maybe that is a learned response. Maybe she saw her parents break up and that's what they did. Maybe, again, she's had bad relationships or bad acts happen to her from friends or other workers, and she found walking away was her best result, and so she just does it every time. So this could just be a bad habit, walking away. If it were me, I'd want to walk away, but I'm just saying that maybe she should think twice about walking away. We don't know her whole situation. Maybe the situation is that they're married and they have children, right? So the environment that is out of her control. And I'm looking here at somebody who is actually deciding, I don't know which way I want to go. Maybe I'm second guessing myself. Maybe I shouldn't walk away. Do I want to walk away from all this stuff that I've built? I mean, I could lose my home, my money. I could lose, my children. I could lose a lot. She's having a hard time deciding what she wants to do. So what I would ask would be, what in the world would make you not want to walk away? Well, maybe we should pull some cards on it. Let's pull 3, all right? Always have the intention. 3 cards. that would pertain to why she doesn't want to walk away. All right, the first one, well, this could be the card of religion. Maybe she's Catholic and she doesn't believe in divorce. Okay, what's number two? Number two is the Three of Cups. Maybe they are kind of important people in their little, big fish in a little pond, and maybe she doesn't want to lose her social standing. Maybe she's afraid she's going to lose friends and her social life. Maybe she just doesn't want to be single and trying to raise 2 kids on her own, and she doesn't want to lose her financial status as well as her social status. And number three, the Three of Pentacles. Maybe in some weird way, she still loves him and maybe wants to try to work it out and trying to figure out how she could work it out. Not saying that she would, not saying that she should, saying that it might be one of the things that's kind of got her stumped. So, all of these things will affect what her next move is. So her next move is actually the next thing that's coming into play, her next step is she's got some options, right? And she needs to figure out those options. And being the analytical, well thought out person that she is going to want to sleep on it. And that is what this final card comes up as, the outcome. What is the outcome of this? Well, as a 4, we're not even close to the end of this situation. So we can sit here and say, gee, you have some options to make. And we can start that conversation with her. What are the options that you feel you have? Let's look at each one of those in separate readings. I always think that the Celtic Cross is where to start and not necessarily where to end it. So the only card that we haven't talked about right now is the advice card, and we have the Queen of Cups. And I think what it's saying is, you know what? You need some self-care. You need to give yourself some compassion and be caring and loving to yourself first. And if you don't want to make a snap decision, if you need to sleep on this and figure this out, be compassionate with yourself and give yourself that time. Give yourself that self-care and give yourself time to think out what you want to do. Now, what I would do at this point is you could take these 3 cards and say, how did these resonate with you? Oh, well, I don't care about my social standing, but I am a devout Catholic and I don't want to go straight to hell, so I don't want to get a divorce, right? So that means, well, then maybe what we need to do is take these 2 cards, do a new spread, and start working on how we're going to get past that, right? Options. But that could be just simply taking the option card out, folding the rest of this up into the deck, and doing another spread, whether it be the Celtic Cross or a different one, and figuring out what our options are. Okay, let's do another one with a different deck. Let me switch. Okay, I'm back with the second one. Let's give it a run through. First, I want to tell you that I am using the Samira May Tarot. I will put it in the description down below where to find it. I really like this deck. It's another small one, small in your hand. But when you're playing with numerology or you're breaking down and playing with especially with numbers, it's really a nice little pip deck. It's kind of a cross between a regular De Marseille and a little bit more leaning toward the Rider, but it's a good deck. All right, so let's do the breakdown. Let's do a scan on this one, okay? First thing we have is we have 2 majors. We've got the Hierophant and the Magician, and they are both in the immediate situation, right? Okay, we have 4 court cards. We have the Page of Swords, the Knight of Cups, the Queen of Swords, and the King of Swords. Now, none of them are repeats. So it's almost as if we have a family here. Okay, so maybe we have a mother, a father, a son, and a cousin, because he's not a sword. I don't know. But it could be a family affair. I'm just saying. Then we have 4 other minors, and there is a repeat. We have the 2 of Pentacles, the 3 of Swords, and the 4 of Pentacles. Now, interestingly enough, they're not together, but they are at the lower end of the spectrum. So this is not a situation right here that's progressed very far. And we end up with the 9 of Pentacles, which is a card of completion in the outcome. So that's kind of an interesting place for that to be. Now let's look at the elements, okay? We have 4 swords. We have the Page, the King, and the Queen, and the 3 of Swords. Okay? That's our bulk. We have 1 cup, and that is going to be the Knight. We have 3 pentacles here. We have the 2, we have the 4, and we have the 9. And we could do that as a triad and see where that takes us. Okay? And we have no wands again. This lackluster, no passion, slow moving, not high energy reading. Well, that's the second one we had in a row. I did not do that on purpose. All right, so now let's look at passive and active. I see, in this, again, is left up to your interpretation. I see 6 passive cards. Anybody that's sitting to me is passive. All my kings and queens are passive. My Hierophant is passive because he's just kind of sitting, hanging out, right? So I've got the Hierophant, the King and Queen. The 3 of Swords, to me, it's just that heart, that's just suspended in midair, doing nothing but hurting. Okay, so to me, that's a passive card. This Pentacle, he's sitting on a chest and he's hugging, and he's being defensive and hugging. He's not wanting to move forward. He's not wanting change. To me, that's passive. And then the 9, she's just kind of hanging out in her garden, enjoying her life. And so to me, that would be passive. So we have 6 cards that are passive in this reading. That leaves us with the Page. And of course, Pages and Knights to me are always active. And then the Magician is very busy and he is manifesting what's going on in his life. And so to me, that is an active card. And the 2 of Pentacles, doing that balancing act, trying to keep everything together. So now let's look at positive and negative. To me, I just can't say that the Hierophant and the Queen of Swords as either positive or negative. I just can't do it. So guess what? They're neutral. Okay? And you can have neutral cards. It's whatever you want to make of it. Okay. So positive, the Magician who's making an effort to do something. The Knight, which is, they mean well, right? They're kind of kooky, but they do mean well. So to me, that's a positive card. Just the fact that the 2 of Pentacles is trying to balance and maintain life, that's positive. And the 9, she's made it. She's successful. She's the epitome of what you can be if you work at it. So those are your positives, right? So we have 2 neutral and we have 4 positive and 4 negative. So that balances this thing out a little bit. So by doing the scan and count, even before you do any type of an overview assessment of the reading, you can make a reasonable deduction that will actually just color your first impressions of this reading. Okay? And I'm talking about the bird's eye view of the situation. So what is the energy? What is the flow? What cards jump out and bite you as the driving force of the issue or possibly issues? Could there be more than one here? It's something to look at. All right, so what do we know so far? We have 2 major arcana right here, right? And both of which are operating in the present sense. The focal point is on something traditional, right? The Hierophant. But the querent's attention, it tends to be on his or her own pursuits. See, to me, that's the block. He's just kind of out for himself. All right, there's plenty of people around, right? Due to the progression of all the different representatives of the court family. So it could be a family affair. Within the minors, we have a progression that's 2, 3, and 4, which again, it hasn't progressed very far. And then, of course, the 9 in the completion section. And that, to me, tells us that this situation could end very soon. Right. So the bulk of Swords tells me that this is probably more about a mental state than it is. We have 3 Pentacles, which do bring in the material world, but it's like, we got to think this thing through, or we have to communicate properly to make this whole thing work. Now, there's only 1 cup, which tells me there's not a lot of feelings involved in this at the moment. So I consider repeats something worth paying attention to, and there aren't any. And there certainly aren't any 3 of a kinds or more, because that really grabs my attention. Just knowing what you've assessed so far, you're already seeing the situation through a different lens, just colored by the facts that we have here. So you don't have to go overboard in these assessments. I mean, just a simple scan and count can really help, guide your brain and get you used to looking for these automatically. So although you can do a deeper dive, the more you practice what I'm doing right here, the more your psyche will pick up on these nuances. I don't want to add them here, but, look at color, look at what's in the skies, look at the various symbols. Is there the same symbol? Do you see right here in the 2, we have the money chest, and we have the money chest, and we have the money chest. So that's obviously a sign of pentacles. But, what does that conjure up for you? That's the kind of thing that you need to look for, okay? So do the people in the cards offer an insight? We can see that the Magician and the King of Swords are looking straight at us. And funny enough, so is the Hierophant's third eye. He's looking straight at us. But our Page and our Queen are both, if you set this guy up here, he's looking at the King. She's looking back at the King. So they're looking to him for, what might be next. And again, down here we have the Knight of Cups, and he's blindfolded, so he's not looking at anything, right? So which card or cards are demanding your attention? In other words, what's jumping out and is the most obvious to you? Now, Anne-Marie McNamara and I recently did a 2-video series on hidden symbols of the deck. And it just researching for those videos really made me much more aware of the symbols and things that you should check out. And honestly, they're great videos. You should take a look at them. We did the hidden ones, the ones that you don't usually see. And we did with the Rider-Waite-Smith. So everybody has that deck. All right. So as an aspiring tarotist, if you have a question from a reader or from a querent, you should try to relate all of this stuff that you're seeing back to the question. But if you don't have a question, then card number 1, it's got to be the message. It's got to be that spidey sense that you pick up. The first thing that comes to your mind when you see that, because that's the message from Spirit. And this is what they want to talk about. So trust what you see and then follow that path in your mind's eye. Let's get back to the spread here. I don't have a question. So let's say I've got a guy sitting in front of me and he doesn't want to share anything with me. Very typical, especially for, at public events, that happens. So let's say the whole situation with him is coming from some type of a loss, okay? Heartbreak or a loss. So maybe he is currently receiving wise advice from counsel, right? This would be the Hierophant. And that's kind of what's going on for him right now in his life, and this is someone who's trying to help him with the situation. Now, what just came to my mind was, what if there was a death? Because the Hierophant does have religious overtones. So what if, and it doesn't have to be death, but let's say he's a wise elder from the church that's, trying to help him make sense of the whole thing. So whatever the recent loss is, and it could have been death or divorce or bankruptcy or, whatever. But let's say it's taken its financial toll on him or even worse, it's just got him feeling very unstable in his life. And it's like everything's going to hell in a handbasket. And so he's clinging on for dear life. Remember the picture of the guy clinging on to, excuse me, his pentacle. One on his head, one on his chest, right? 2 under his feet. All right. The feeling of loss is here, but it's going to dissipate soon as you will come to terms with it. So we see that energy will be fading soon. It's just going to take some time. What's on your mind? Card number 5. It could be that he's feeling like he needs to pull a rabbit out of his hat, maybe you think. He's a magician, right? Okay. How's he going to get his finances in order? How's he going to get along after he's dumped on some new path? The Magician tells us that he has all the resources that he needs to make it happen. So I think it's going to all work out. And we know that the number 9 says that he will too. So we don't have to dwell on, oh my God, how's he going to make it work out? Because we already know what's coming. We already know that he's going to be able to get through it. And you know what? If there was a death or a divorce or something like that, there's usually legalities that go along with it, right? This is our King of Swords. He is typically in law enforcement. He can be a judge. He can be judgmental or military or whatever. But usually he is, we can consider him a judge. So maybe that's what is going on. If you look from past to present to future, you can see that he has concerns, financial concerns, right, or instability that he's seeking wise counsel for, that ends up with contracts or legal ease that will be his next step in this situation. Now, number 7, The Knight of Cups. How can the Knight of Cups sabotage your situation? Well, I always like to revert everything back to the foundation. Okay, it always just makes more sense. So how can he make it worse? Well, as the Knight of Cups, he tends to look at things through rose-colored glasses. So maybe he's going to prolong his suffering here by pretending like he doesn't feel it. And maybe that's where the Hierophant comes in handy. So is he being proactive or resistant? I would say that if he's looking at rose-colored glasses and doesn't want to look at the reality of the situation, that's probably an obvious sign that he's being resistant, which is counterproductive to what, to the magician that's inside him. Okay. You know, he's just acting like he's trying to punch his way out of a paper bag here. Anyway, he needs to take a good hard look at his foundation, and he needs to deal with whatever grief that it's caused, and he needs to do that before simply trying to just move on with no closure. Right. So let's look at his environment. Okay, so as a Two of Pentacles, it's a balancing act. Okay, it's almost as if the 2 and the 4 go together, right? I mean, things have changed. You know, he's lost his stability, and it shows in this 2 of Pentacles as he's balancing himself, trying to keep his life upright. Okay. And you know what? Whatever lands here, which is this balancing act, it will affect his future. You know, it will affect the final outcome. The foundation, the recent past, and the likely outcome. He had a great loss. He's feeling the instability of it all. But at the end of the day, he's going to come out okay. And again, if we look at the past and the future, you know, he's going from instability to having somebody in his corner and taking away all the legal mumbo jumbo off of his plate. So the last card we have to address here is the advice card. And it happens to be a court card. It could be a woman that's going to come into his life that's going to try to help him hold everything together and keep him from jumping off the ledge until this all gets worked out. Or it could be an attribute. And it could be saying, you know what, you need to maintain status quo right now. You need to toughen up. You need to look at this in an analytical way. You need to be open and communicative in order to get through it. So it's going to be a bumpy ride, and you're going to have to see your way through. But the magician says, you've got this. And hence you do, because you end up on the other side and you have the card of completion, which is great because all this turmoil that you might be going through or feeling now is going to end. Well, I hope you got something out of that. And let me see here. I'm going to switch you back to me. I hope you got something out of it. I hope it was helpful. The Celtic Cross is not hard, but you can see, you can get a lot of information out of it. So I will be back with more videos. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like this one if you're so inclined, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.